Can you hear me? This is Liva. Hello, colleagues in headquarters. We are missing two speakers here. Would you have their contacts to reach out and to figure out whether they are arriving or not? Because we are about to start. It's 10:01.
Yes. Yes, we are trying to contact them. Is Badal and Ahmed, right? Yes. Gracia is there.
Supposed to see us through live stream. Okay. Thank you. So we will wait for a bit, and if they don't arrive, I don't know. We may start then. So they were saying that they will drop a message.
Sorry, I'm just checking with them if they really want me to start. The organizers, I'm just checking with them. Yeah, 1 second.
Yes.
Can I say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, start please. We have 30 person
Okay.
online.
Okay,
on YouTube.
we can go ahead.
Yes.
Okay,
Thanks.
ready to start? Excellent. Okay. Greetings from the Food and Agriculture Pavilion at COP27, which is the pavilion is co-hosted by FAO together with CGIAR and the Rockefeller Foundation. My name is Inkarka Derzhanova, and I'm going to be your facilitator today. I'm a senior climate change officer at the Office of Climate, Biodiversity and Environment at FAO. The topic of our discussion today is anticipatory actions and multi-risk management interventions for climate security. This session will discuss how to strengthen the resilience of agri-food systems and undertake innovative interventions such as anticipatory action, and to reduce both climate and conflict threats. We'll have a speaker who will share with us her perspectives. We will also watch 2 videos prepared by the colleagues from FAO, and then towards the end of the presentation we'll listen to the video address from the expert who unfortunately couldn't join us today. So our conversation will be structured in 3 rounds of question and answer on 3 related topics. 1 is addressing climate security, 2, applying a multi-risk management approach, and 3, scale up anticipatory action. So I would like to ask the technicians to share the videos with us. But just for a minute, before I begin, I would like to introduce the authors who prepared the video. The first video is from Adriana Ignasiuk from the Economic and Policy Analysis for Climate Change of the Agri-Food Economics Division. And the second video is from Dunja Dujanovic from the Program and Results Team of the Office of Emergency and Resilience at the FAO. Please, let's watch the videos.
Good morning. First, on behalf of the organizers, I would like to give a warm welcome to the highly esteemed panelists, wonderful audience, and all of you who joined us online. My name is Ada Ignaciuk, and I'm a senior economist and the team lead of the EPIC team of FAO, team that provides an economic analysis and policy advice on issues related to climate change and sustainability. This event will highlight additional evidence that without peace, there is no end to hunger, and without food security, peace cannot last. Today's meeting is all about finding the solutions to a multitude of interconnected risks that many countries are facing worldwide. Those risks include climate change, natural disasters, conflict, and food insecurity. To manage them through transformative interventions, it is crucial to act preventively, to distribute support to vulnerable populations in the right time and in the right place, and to increase resilience of the most vulnerable. The importance of the issue is reflected by the increasing attention devoted by international institutions, national policymakers, and humanitarian agencies to the climate change and the extreme weather event as a severe threat to security and peace. In fact, the pervasive effect of climate change and the disruptive impact of extreme events can interplay with other factors to raise the risk of conflicts and food shortages. Recent studies developed by the FAO show that climate change can spark or exacerbate new conflicts in vulnerable areas. For example, our recent assessment in Somalia and Nigeria indicate that drought episodes contribute to more frequent violent conflicts by triggering agricultural market fluctuations. This suggests that implementation of adaptive strategies to reduce climate risk also contribute to increased food security and the reduction of the probability of future conflicts. These findings are also expected to help to inform practical strategies for policymakers to prioritize solutions and transformative intervention and target the most vulnerable areas. To promote better understanding of climate security link, the EPIC team has been collaborating closely with the CGIAR on establishing a climate security observatory to inform multi-risk management strategies that mitigate the intersecting risk of conflict, food shortages, and climate change. I believe that many of today's intervention will be speaking to it. In order to start our discussion, let me stop here and highlight one more time that without peace, there is no end to hunger, and without food security, peace cannot last. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now the second video, please, right away.
Good morning to all. My name is Dunja Dujanovic. I lead the Program and Results team at the Office of Emergencies and Resilience of FAO. Agriculture and food security are severely impacted by climate extremes, often in combination with other driving factors such as conflict and economic shocks. Over the past 10 years, for instance, the agricultural sector alone absorbed more than 26% of overall impact caused by medium to large-scale climate-related disasters, and 82% for drought alone. Intervening in anticipation of a forecast shock to mitigate the impact of such shocks on lives and livelihoods is an effective and cost-saving measure. Anticipatory actions are short-term disaster risk management interventions implemented during the critical time window between an early warning trigger and the actual occurrence of the shock, meaning before impacts on lives and livelihoods materialize. Anticipatory actions can consist of cash distributions or in-kind provisions of agricultural inputs and equipment, either separately or in combination, also combined with specific training. Since 2016, FAO has provided support on anticipatory action to more than 40 countries across Asia-Pacific, Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, providing direct assistance to vulnerable people ahead of shocks and strengthening national capacities to implement anticipatory actions. The return on investment studies undertaken by FAO to measure the economic benefits of anticipatory action show that for every dollar invested, farmers and herders obtained up to $7 in avoided disaster impacts and increased local production. In view of this potential in minimizing loss and damage caused by climate extremes, anticipatory action must become one of the integral parts of the way we address the climate crisis. Furthermore, by safeguarding agricultural livelihoods and food security from both primary and secondary impacts of hazards, anticipatory action can play a significant role in fragile settings where such hazards can further exacerbate the effects, for example, of ongoing conflict and other shocks. Anticipatory action can help to mitigate the potential negative impacts of climate-induced shocks on displaced populations and host communities in contexts of forced displacement. For example, in the case of La Guajira in Colombia, FAO implemented anticipatory actions to mitigate the effects of drought and migration, and this made a positive contribution towards improving social cohesion between migrant and host households. The potential of anticipatory action to address multiple risks and multiple drivers of acute food insecurity is particularly relevant considering that countries with highest levels of acute hunger are often affected by simultaneous combinations of conflict and natural hazards. The growing overlap of climate and conflict-related crises calls for an integrated approach and working methods that enhance the resilience of agri-food systems to multiple shocks and crises. With increasing humanitarian needs and shrinking resources, there is a clear need for more cost-effective, impactful actions to protect agricultural livelihoods and thus reverse the trends of acute food insecurity. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a fruitful discussion today.
Excellent. I would like to thank both Adriana and Dunja for preparing the videos and setting the scene for our today's conversation so eloquently and nicely. Before we proceed with the rest of our program, I would like to invite audience in the room and also online to join the interactive Jamboard. I would like to ask the technicians to please share the QR code and the instructions. Yes, this is the QR code. So for those of us who join us online and in the audience, I would like to explain what's going to happen. So you see here the QR code. Please use your smartphones, scan the QR code and join the Jamboard, please. And it should take you to the file with 3 boards. On each of the boards, you'll see a dedicated question. So I'll give you a minute to get connected. Please let me know if you are already online and connected. Did it work? Excellent. There should be many more people joining online live. So I hope everybody has managed to do that. And now I will move on to the next part of our event. Now I have the pleasure to invite our expert who has joined us today in person. This is Dr. Grazia Pazzillo. She is a senior economist at the Alliance of Biodiversity International and CIAT at CGIAR. She co-leads the CGIAR Focus on Climate Security team. Grazia holds a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Development Economics from the University of Sussex, and her research focuses on evaluating the role of climate in exacerbating existing risks and insecurities. Grazia, please, thank you for joining us, and please take the seat here with us at the podium. Excellent. So I would like to ask the technicians to move to the next slide with the question.
Could you please allow us to share the screen in remoteness? Thanks.
Excellent. Yes, this is the question, and the Jamboard hopefully will get the comments from the audience. Please use the sticky notes to share with us your. Please use the sticky notes to share with us your points, your feedback on these 2 questions. So as we have heard in the first video, conflicts and climate are increasingly interconnected. Without climate-sensitive actions, efforts for peace building and food security will not succeed. So this leads us to the first discussion statement on climate security. As you can see here on the top of the screen, this is the question. Transformative interventions are needed not only to address climate-affected areas, but also to prevent climate shocks that could further aggravate the effects of such climate conflicts. So I would like to hear from our audience here in the room and also online their views on this question. And while you're thinking about it, I also wanted to invite Grazia to share with us her views. And while she's talking, I wanted to continue getting the feedback from the audience. And then after her intervention, we'll see which ideas have emerged from the audience and whether there are any points of convergence. And we'll just, I'll read out a few points from the Jamboard. Grazia, please, take the floor.
Thank you very much, Inka, for this presentation. Thank you FAO for organizing this very important event. We are on the last day of COP and many things have happened on climate security, so this is really relevant, a really relevant question and topic to cover. So transformative interventions are needed. We must fundamentally change the way we do climate action, and the reason for that is that climate action was not designed to capture and account the impact of climate on conflict and security. And we know this is a reality now. We have evidence from the field that climate is exacerbating risks and insecurities that are common drivers of conflict. The evidence is there, and this is also our mission. The CGIAR-focused climate security aims to prove, to qualify and quantify this nexus across 4 main research areas: the evidence, programming, policy, and finance for peace. Our team is scattered across multiple climate security hotspots, and providing robust evidence, policy-relevant evidence of climate security that can help transforming interventions is our mission. Our flagship innovation, as mentioned by Ada previously, is what we call the Climate Security Observatory, a decision support tool that will help and guide policymakers in designing transformative interventions and address across 4 main questions. So the first question is the how question. How is climate exacerbating common drivers of conflict? Then the where question. Where are climate security hotspots located across the globe? Then the who question. Who is bearing the burden of these multiple compound risks? And then finally the what question, which is the most difficult question of them all. What can we do to mitigate the impact of climate on conflict and addressing compound risks? Within the Climate Security Observatory, we are also developing tools and guidelines to support policymakers in accounting for compound risks and producing transformative interventions. We are using an integrated multi-hazard risk assessment approach, and one of these approaches and methods that we are using is what we are developing together with the EPIC team in FAO, the aims in providing robust evidence on the causal link between climate drivers of security and conflict, with a specific focus on food insecurity. The integrated approach is needed to really understand and propose solutions that account for compound risks. And the CSO, the Climate Security Observatory, will help policymakers designing those transformative interventions, moving from the way we do climate adaptation in a traditional way towards what we call transformative adaptation, one that doesn't only looks at addressing direct causes of vulnerability, but that addresses the root causes of this vulnerability, so that we can move towards what we call a climate resilient peace. We can increase resilience while also sustaining and maintaining peace. Over. Thanks, Inga.
Thank you so much, Grazie. This is really interesting to hear from you about the threat multiplier and the effects of climate change on proliferating conflict. But it was interesting also for me what you have said, that you have to do a very thorough analysis that is based on data and evidence, and clearly understand who is the actor, who is the beneficiary, what are the interlinkages between the climate and the security, what needs to be done, and what type of solutions could bring us to the climate resilient future. This is a very interesting perspective that is based on the solid research and on the practical work that you do within the Climate Security Observatory project. So I also wanted to ask you to look at the Jamboard and see if there are any points that you agree with, or if there's anything that you think we should mention.
Yeah, thanks. There's a lot of interesting points. It's a bit difficult to read them from here. So how do we ensure, for instance, that interventions are truly transformative in humanitarian system? If the humanitarian system is not transformed, in order to shift the power and center of lived experience and local capacity, I think that's pretty much at the basis of what our approach, which we call the transformative adaptation framework approach. As I said, what we really need to do is to move away from trying to address only the direct causes of vulnerability, but really looking at the root causes. What is in the back of what we really see in the field? What is causing people, for instance, to migrate and to move to other places? Whenever we talk, for instance, we collect data on migration, the first thing that people say on the question, why are you moving, is related to economic opportunities. But this direct link for the decision to migrate is really hiding and covering some of the most critical risks that these people are exposed to, one of which is climate. So we are launching an initiative, Fragility, Conflict and Migration Initiative, this year to really unpack these root causes of vulnerability that are related, for instance, to the decision to migrate and move, but also to understand what are the different risks that can be mitigated so that people can move if they want to move. So not only looking at migration as a negative coping strategy, but also as a positive coping adaptation strategy. So. Thanks.
Yeah, this is an excellent point about the positive benefits from migration. Often migration is perceived as a negative trend that should be prevented, but then I think it's also time to do a more comprehensive analysis by looking at both sides of the coin. Thank you so much. I would like to move to the next question, and please could you share the next Jamboard with us on the screen? I wanted to ask the technicians to move to the second board. It starts with the how to prioritize. Exactly, so this is our second question. How to prioritize solutions or interventions in a context characterized by multiple risks and uncertainties. And again, as we did for the first question, I wanted to invite our audience here in the room and also online to share their views through the Jamboard. And I also wanted to ask Grazie to please share with us your perspective, please.
Thanks a lot, Inga. Again, great question once again. So we believe from also the presentations that we've seen that there exists a connection between climate risks, socioeconomic risks, and security risks through what we call the climate security nexus, whereby climate exacerbates drivers of conflict and insecurity. So in the context of climate adaptation, it is clear that if we want to improve resilience, increase resilience, we cannot prescind from tackling and addressing risks that are causing tensions and conflict, as well as improving resilience, climate risks. So we must understand, in improving the way that we work in climate action, we must understand if there is any potential of our climate solutions and interventions to also have an impact on peace, to become an instrument for the promotion of peace and security. So our team, the CGIAR Focus Climate Security Team, has developed a tool which is called C3ST, the Climate Security Sensitiveness Scoring Tool, which will help prioritize and identify ranking climate adaptation practices and interventions based on their peace potential. So the tool is composed of three main steps. The first step is the identification and assessment of the initial conditions based on the level of social cohesion of the societies. Social cohesion, as we all know, is critical for conflict mitigation, prevention, but also for improving resilience is a fundamental dimension. So we roughly divide the societies into three main groups based on their level of social cohesion. The first one is what we call the deeply divided societies. Those societies where groups that are conflicting, they are not really interacting. They are very divided, very isolated, and they don't really want to interact. They don't share spaces. The trust and cohesion levels are at the lowest. So the ideal climate action, or what we call the climate peace pathway or mechanism that could be implemented to really address, have a peace potential for climate action, are those that we call the technocratic climate actions. Those that minimize transboundary contacts, but while at the same time increasing resilience capacities of groups in isolation and start building and bridging and creating social cohesion and trust, but with groups in isolations. This we did in long term will ensure that climate action can also produce some co-benefits for peace and security. The second group of societies, we define them as tolerated societies. Those where people are sharing biophysical spaces but not resources. So the ideal climate action or peace pathway is what we call the climate action for conflict resolution. Those interventions that create neutral space for interactions, dialogues, and negotiations, whilst at the same time reducing resource uncertainties and therefore creating space for collaboration. The third and final group of society, based on the level of social cohesion, is what we call the power symmetrical societies. Those where people share resources, share spaces, but are affected by deeply rooted inequalities. So the climate peace mechanisms, the ideal climate peace mechanism in this case is what we called the climate action for conflict transformation. So those interventions that increase and improve the management of common resources, foster collective action, while reducing inequality and increasing cooperation. So the first step of this tool is to really understand the initial condition and to understand the level of social cohesion. The second step is the core of the tool, the scoring part. In this second step, we aim to understand whether specific drivers of the climate peace pathways and mechanisms are accounted for or addressed by the climate actions that we are evaluating. We have identified a set of drivers and set that we believe and mechanisms that we believe are fundamental for climate action to contribute to peace. And these mechanisms are as follows. The climate action must support economic development, must help building institutions, must help building trust and cooperation, create space for resource sustainability, enhance knowledge, build capacity and resilience. These are fundamental pillars for building a climate action solution or interventions that also contribute to peace. The set of indicators is different for the different level of social cohesion, but it's also different depending on the type of climate peace mechanism that we are considering. So the step 3 really is the final step, where you will be able, or whoever uses this tool is going to be able to compare initial conditions to the reality of what your climate action solution and intervention does. And will allow us to understand whether what we are doing, whether our solutions and interventions are appropriate to address the initial conditions and needs. It will also allow you to identify gaps in these solutions and to prioritize, rank, and identify those interventions that have more or less potential for security. So to mitigate those multiple compounding risks that we are mentioning, that we have been discussing, and therefore also to ultimately contribute to peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing with us this information about the very practical tool. I understand this is a decision support system that is based on evidence and the data probably is a combination of qualitative and quantitative data, and it captures the biophysical data and the social and economic components. Sounds like it's a very, very fascinating tool. I'm very happy that you're working on this, and I hope that it will be disseminated and used by many other actors in the conflict and climate intersection. But in the meantime, while you were sharing with us your perspective, a few participants have posted their points. I wanted to ask you to quickly check and see if you agree or disagree with any of them, and maybe there is something that has not been mentioned yet and you could highlight for us.
Perhaps this question on the side here also closest, I can read it better. What is the coalition of partners needed to maximize the Peace Corps benefits of adaptation interventions? Who needs to work together? Well, that's a great question, and we've heard it so many times at COP this year. we must bridge the gap between the climate and the security community. We haven't seen that happening again. We've worked, so when we talk with the policymakers and governments, there's the Ministry of Environment, there's the Ministry of Interior, Peace, or Foreign Affairs that are looking at different aspects of the same cake, different pieces of the same cake, risks, but they're not really talking to each other. When we go to the field and we speak with communities, it is clear that climate is contributing to exacerbating risks. But when we look at policies, and then here we have Franz Schappender who's leading the work on the policy coherence assessment, we don't find any insight that the climate security nexus is there. So there's no acknowledgement nor awareness on the fact that climate can exacerbate threats that can contribute to insecurity. So this is something that needs to change. And the way we change it is by bridging these gaps, by creating linkages and platforms, by linking with existing multi-stakeholder platforms that can help us addressing the issue of compound risks. For instance, at country level or country subnational level, we are working with the Ministry of Agriculture in Kenya and other ministries to really start addressing and creating a technical working group on climate security within for instance, what they call the Climate Smart Agriculture multi-stakeholder platform. There's a bunch of security actors that are working in the space of mitigating and preventing conflict that will join the effort of all of the stakeholders working on climate smart agriculture to work together to develop a common vision on what is needed to mitigate the impact on climate, on security. So,
I absolutely agree with you on the need for the complex decisions for the complex problems. So it is absolutely important to address these issues through the multi-hazard, multi-stakeholder, multi-constituency solutions that could truly address the actual reality on the ground. Because people who face the conflict, who struggle with the conflict, or who live in the conflict prone areas, they really suffer from the multitude of challenges, and it is really impossible to address this situation with the lopsided or one-sided policies. So,
and Inka, if I may add, there's a big missing piece in the climate security space, or in the security space, if I may, which is climate finance. Our recent analysis shows that the bigger investor donors in terms of climate finance are not really investing or implementing projects in those countries that are most affected by conflict. But we know that most of the half of the food insecure population is located in 21 conflict-affected countries, and these are countries that are also more exposed to climate impact. So why are we not investing in this country? Well, the reason is simple: they are too risky. But at the moment, we've been talking in this COP for quite a long time on the need to invest in climate security hotspots. And this must change because the population living in these countries are those that are most in need of our support. So this is another group, a coalition of partners that we need to really integrate in the current climate adaptation and climate resilience partners.
Yeah, absolutely. Another excellent point. I think access to climate finance should improve. The priorities that are set by the global and multilateral financial institutions should change or should become conflict-proof. Yes, I absolutely agree with you. And yeah, I understand this chicken and egg situation, when the environment will be right to start the financing. But then, without having the access to finance, we cannot really create the right enabling environment in the countries.
And in fact, the question is, how can we de-risk these countries? What can FAO and other organizations and research organizations help de-risking countries where we see that there's a layer of compounding risks accelerating because of the climate crisis? So that should be our mission as we move ahead.
Exactly. Very good points. I really agree with you. So I also wanted to move on because we don't have that much time left. And I wanted to ask technicians to take us to the third Jamboard, please. Exactly. It's already on the screen. So here the question is, how can anticipatory action contribute to climate security, and how to ensure that such contribution is sustained over time in order to make a difference? So as we have done before, I would like to invite our audience here in the room and online to share your views through the sticky notes in this Jamboard. And Gratem, please share with us your perspective on this angle.
Thanks, Inka, again. So preventing the escalation of climate impacts into security threats is basically what the climate security nexus is all about. And therefore, we want to mitigate the impact of climate or those drivers of conflict, and anticipatory action can help with that. It will be critical to design the anticipatory actions in a way that can address and mitigate the impact of climate on conflict, but we are not there yet. So the anticipatory actions that we've used so far, that we've designed so far, follow the fundamental traditional climate adaptation approach that really doesn't take into consideration the fact that climate can be a threat multiplier. We must change, we must design the anticipatory action to be sensitive to the climate security nexus, to be useful for this purpose, reducing multiple risks that climate can exacerbate. And the way we do that is by really accounting for the interconnections of different times, different dimensions, different scales, different systems. The local, the regional, the national level needs must be accounted for, as those risks at all of these levels are connected. Most of our data analysis that is out there is often at country level, but these risks are transboundary, so we need to move ahead and move forward and make sure that whatever happens in an area also is accounted for in another area, as these risks are not idiosyncratic anymore. The action must reflect the fact that we are facing an increasing and accelerating climate crisis, with the level of peacefulness deteriorating constantly, and with compounding risks affecting the decision of households for their livelihood. This requires oftentimes the integration of very difficult systems, or the integration, if we talk about the analytical analysis, the analysis that we do, the integration of data and data sets that are often very difficult to link. We are constantly facing, and I see I have our colleagues from the EPIC team there, constantly facing with challenges of data scarcity, differences in the units of analysis, but also temporal and geographical availability, which differs across different systems and data. So these are challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis. But there is space to work on this through partnerships, through engaging with the data collection providers and different institutions. We can bridge these challenges and provide a systemic monitoring system in a way that can allow us to address and account for multiple cascading risks. So the anticipatory action must be designed following what we call a multi-hazard risk assessment framework or approach, similar to what we're using within the Climate Security Observatory. But an important point is that we cannot rely on data-driven approaches, desk review approaches. We must make sure that anticipatory action is co-designed with the people that are most in need of these actions. We must rely on what we call the community voices, collect information about what is needed directly from the population that is most in need of these actions. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent point. I think it is absolutely important to take into account the transboundary impacts, because a lot of conflicts, they have this massive spillover effects, that they go well beyond the boundaries of any particular jurisdiction. And it was interesting for me to hear also what you have said about the issues with the data integration. Yeah, we live in a world when there's so much data, but we are still struggling with the data comparability, with the data continuity with the lack of data to do the historical analysis, with the data used to do the proper climate-related forecast. It is really a significant gap. But then the last point also about the community voice, community empowerment and stakeholder involvement is also absolutely important. It is difficult to replace this particular angle with any data at all. So on-the-ground consultations and analysis, including the gender analysis, right, to better understand what is happening in reality is absolutely important.
And on that, our team, CGIAR Focus Climate Security, within the Climate Resilience Initiative of One CGIAR, we are carrying out a set of fieldwork to understand the type of risks that groups and people are facing in hotspots of climate security risks, and conducting specific gender analysis to see what are the gender implication for women and youth in places where compounding risks of climate conflict and other socioeconomic risks are occurring.
Excellent. I see that we have quite many points from the audience. Do you want to read any of them or respond to some of them?
So perhaps the second question on how important it is to work with national and regional institutions and build their capacities is fundamental. The way we work within the One CGIAR initiative is that we're demand-driven. We design our research based on the needs of national and regional institutions and people, the farmers that we want to help. So whenever we start our research, we start it with the inputs that we get directly from the people in need. So it's fundamental to start from the beginning, designing the research and the different approaches together with them. And even more important with anticipatory action, it's so important to develop capacity to deliver these action timely and effectively, to have a capacity at the local level for that. And in fact, I mean, specifically for climate security, there's a call for action from the African Union Peace and Security Council. They've released a set of communique on this, saying that we must build capacity of local experts in addressing compound risks, and therefore also in designing solutions that can mitigate this impact. This is what we do also when we go to the field. We identify potential solutions directly with the beneficiaries, the people that we work with, farmers, pastoralists, etc. So those climate action solutions that could have peace potential, but coming directly from those who are living these risks. So it's particularly important to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The local voice is absolutely important in the conflict prevention, but then also in the rehabilitation in the post-conflict situations as well. Right.
And on that, if I may add, Inka, we just completed, Francis leading the project with on mainstreaming climate security risks in post-recovery plans in the MENA region. And in fact, what we had a benefit cost analysis run for a set of countries, and we found that there is a huge amount of return if we include climate security, if we include the role of climate as a threat multiplier into post-recovery plans for conflict-affected countries. So there's much that needs to be done also in that front after conflict have finished. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. So I wanted to ask if we have a fourth Jamboard. I know that the organizers were going to prepare a fourth one. Okay, so these are the additional comments from the audience. I wanted to take a minute to read them. And grazie again. If you have any feedback, please share with us your perspective.
Perhaps this one in blue. Climate change can also act to bring divided community together to address, mitigate hazard, thus acting to contribute to social capital. This is a great point, and it reflects really into two things that we are doing. One is we have a PhD student working in Bangladesh, looking specifically on how the climate security risks, the compound risks generated by the accelerating climate crisis, can actually foster cooperation. And we know that this is also related to the migration, that oftentimes with fast onset disaster, environmental disaster, the main result in terms of cohesion and relationship among groups is cooperation, is solidarity. People are moving in other communities, host communities are welcoming migrants, and mobile communities that are affected, have been affected by the fast onset. So conflicts might not arise if there is good governance, if there are certain conditions in place. But another thing that we are doing is within the UN Food System Summit Coalition, the HDP Nexus Coalition. We've recently launched the Climate, Food System and Security Workstream. And I invite you to join this workstream. The aim is to really collate evidence on the climate security across the world, and to then produce a shared vision on what is out there in terms of evidence research. But one specific aspect that we want to tackle is exactly what we're saying here. So the benefits that also come out of the climate impacts. So we've been talking about the greening Sahel and the resource abundance that can also occur in certain instances because of the climate impacts. And there are implications for that. I mean, positive implications and negative implications that can come as, for instance, also related to mobility. As people might move, pastoralist groups might move towards those areas where there is resource abundance, etc. So it's a critical, important aspect of the climate impacts. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think so far we've been mostly talking about climate as a disruptor, right? Climate as a risk multiplier, climate as a threat. But we should also understand that climate could be a peace-building tool, or climate action can generate the peace at the community level, that is for sure, because people have to learn how to manage the joint natural resources base in a way that is not only the climate friendly, but also contributes to the community development and the rural development on the ground. Yeah, this is a very good angle. I'm happy that the organizers picked this particular angle. I think we came to the end of our interactive session. We have one last video to share with you. This is from the speaker who unfortunately couldn't join us today, but he sent his video address in advance of the event. So I wanted to ask the technicians to play the video, please.
Abdul Ali, I am the head of the Information and Research Department at Agrovet Regional Center, based in Niamey, Niger. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to highlight some issues related to climate and climate security. First, as you know, Sahel in West Africa is one of the most sensitive regions to climate change and climate variability. One of the main factors of this high sensitivity comes to the fact that the agricultural system is mainly rainfall. Also, the climate risk is associated to many other factors that increase the vulnerability of the populations, as we can see it in the area of food security through the cadre harmonisé analysis. There is really an urgent need to strengthen the population security with respect to the combinations of risk factors, and focus should be made on the prevention. In that directions, relevant informations, both in terms of a better knowledge of risk profiles and in terms of forecasting and early warning. Relevant information is key for early actions. For example, in West Africa and Sahel, the region used to face continuous drought period. This drought period was followed by a high interannual variability. Now, we are facing high intraseasonal variability, where extreme dry spell are followed by extreme wet period. A better knowledge of that dynamics is key to support the adaptation effort. Some gaps to be filled to ensure relevant risk information is to increase investment in the data collections and capacity building. And this is in the pearl of sea submissions as mandated by the member state. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. So I would like to thank Grazia for sharing your views. And I would like to thank also the audience here in the room and those who joined us online for sharing your views, for providing the inputs, for using the Jamboard. The Jamboard will remain active until Monday, so if there are any additional points that you would like to add to this analysis, to this conversation and interaction with the FAO, please feel free to do so. We'll be very happy to hear from you. I believe that it was a very interesting conversation, very insightful, and I wanted to thank all of you for coming to the Food and Agriculture Pavilion, and I hope to stay in touch with all of you and to probably meet at the next COP as well. Thank you so much.